I have hesitated on telling you what's actually going on down on the ground in Ukraine. We didn't really talk about that last week because I'm not sure who to believe. I think our press is so skewed, and I know the Russians so skewed. So what is the truth? Well, we have Jason Buttrill with us, who has some sources on the ground in Ukraine, mainly because we've done so much work on Ukraine in the last couple of years that we know some people, and he's got also some other contacts as well. Tell me what's going on, Jason.
Fairly catastrophic. I won't say catastrophic. It was a very bad weekend for the Russian military, and it's been just a bad invasion period. A lot of the reports and you hit on it, is you can't trust a lot of the stuff you see from both sides.
From both sides, good or bad.
But all evidence now is showing that Russia probably expected this to be a 72-hour time frame. The initial troops that Russia sent in, they were paratroopers, which are basically glorified riot police. And that fits along, and they were decimated. Most of them were decimated on entering into the country. I don't have actual casualty counts on either side,
right?
Because they're so wildly skewed on both sides. Mm-hmm. Probably look at what each side is saying and then take the middle number, and that's probably what it was. Okay. But even that number is not good for Russia. But a lot of the equipment that's getting either destroyed or captured, they also have riot equipment like shields, batons, stuff like that. So Russia clearly thought this was, hey, 3 days maximum, we'll go in, the population will capitulate or turn to us, and this will turn into more of an occupation without firing many shots. Very wrong. Multiple aircraft were shot down this weekend. That just caps off, over the past, week and a half, several aircraft, helicopters, fixed-wing aircraft have been shot down on the Russian side. For the most part, their operations are stalling on the ground because they don't have the logistical capability at the moment to take care of anything. They don't have fuel. They don't have food, water, things like that are very scarce on the ground, which shows that they were just completely unprepared. This is not a good invasion, which you might want to say, okay, that's a great thing. But if you look at Russian strategy, if you look at Aleppo, the siege of Aleppo, if you look at the siege of Grozny during the second, Chechen war, when these things stall, they move to severe bombing, indiscriminate bombing, cluster bombing of
They've been doing,
big population
we think,
areas.
the cluster bombing in the cities already. They were doing that last week, which you don't do. Isn't that against the Geneva Convention?
Yes, but the Russians do it, and they get away with it.
So now the news is this morning that they have circled all of these cities, or a lot of the big cities in Ukraine. That is what they do right before they just start bombing the snot out of cities, isn't it?
Yeah.
Historically speaking.
Yes, and they haven't really completed encircling of many of these. It appears that way, and a lot of people have reported and showing these large clusters of Ukraine that are under Russian control. And that's not entirely the truth from what I'm seeing. Russia has pushed into Ukraine. They're on major roadways, but they're not really occupying the surrounding territory. For one of the reasons right now is it's very, very, this is, rainy, it's very muddy, it's hard to move some of these vehicles across this land.
Yeah.
Again, it doesn't seem like they were prepared for that, the Russians. So even the territory that they have, it's not exactly what I would call an occupation. It's like they're not really occupying those areas.
We're seeing the Russians move now in force, really, and having to have some sort of offense and defense. They don't seem very impressive.
Oh, no. Most of them they don't seem like professional soldiers to me.
Right. I mean, what happened to the mighty Soviet army?
Right. I mean, it almost seems like MacArthur was right. If this is the capability, we should have just gone through and gotten this over with from the beginning, right after World War II. Russia hasn't fought a war like this. If you look at the United States, we've been fighting a war like this for over 20 years. And it's very complicated. Combined arms, when you combine artillery, troops on the ground, aircraft in the air, it's complicated. The United States military is the best in the world at it. So I don't know if they just expected, hey, we'll just adopt these tactics and go in and it'll be done. But clearly, this is the evidence that they're not very capable at this kind of warfare.
So what does this mean? What do you think that you put Putin into a corner? What do you think that means?
Yeah, not good for the people of Ukraine. What you're looking at is, if you want to compare it to what it's going to look at what they did in Aleppo, look at what they did in Grozny.
The world won't stand for that.
Yes, because
they say, well, what about Syria? Syria, it is nothing about race or anything else. It is about the Middle East has always been on fire. It's a dumpster fire, and you never know how to help or if it will help. You're always on the wrong side. I mean, that's why America didn't look at Syria. America barely looked at the Christians in the area. I mean, we just didn't do anything to help the Christians in the area. So it's not because of a religion or a race. It's because it's a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
This has been a stable, westernized country, completely corrupt, but a stable, westernized country. So, yeah, we are looking at it. And I don't think that the world will stand for him just shelling cities.
No, we were talking off air, Stu. You mentioned that, where's the Russian Air Force been on this? And I think a big reason why he hasn't probably bombed the heck out of some of these cities with his massive Air Force is because the world will not stand for this happening to, a more Western European country. When he just unleashes like he did in Aleppo or Grozny, when cluster bombs are hitting Kyiv, that's when the world is going to be like, okay, you've gone far enough. The question then is, how far does the West get involved here? Which gets scary.
Let me play cut 2. This over the weekend. This is Blinken.
What more can the United States do here if, for instance, the Polish government, a NATO member, wants to send fighter jets? Does that get a green light from the U.S., or are you afraid that will escalate tension?
No, that gets a green light. In fact, we're talking with our Polish friends right now about what we might be able to do to backfill their needs if, in fact, they choose to provide these fighter jets to the Ukrainians. What could we do? How can we help to make sure that they get something to backfill the planes that they're handing over to the Ukrainians? We're in very active discussions with them about that. Look, I've been in Europe for the last couple of days, working closely, as always, with our allies and partners at NATO, the European Union, the G7 countries, and all of us together are continuing to take steps to increase the pressure on Russia through additional sanctions, all of which are very actively under discussion and will be implemented in the coming days, as well as taking further steps to give the Ukrainians what they need to defend themselves against the Russian aggression.
Okay, so this seems like a good thing. Explain how scary that is.
Well, NATO supplied fighter jets. That's kind of another level right there. Coming from Poland, they are old. I think it was MiG-29s that they're considering. Mm-hmm. Remember in Top Gun and MiG-28s. That was in the 80s. Yeah. But this is still an escalation, and it's got the earmarks of your typical Cold War, battle. Whether it's the U.S. and Vietnam, the Chinese and the Soviets wouldn't get involved, but they would supply Russians to the Vietnamese. Mm-hmm. Very similar. North Korea, same thing. This is how, and Afghanistan, point that one out too. But this is a major regression, and it's got all the the symptoms or the same things that happened during the Cold War. Now the question now is, like during Vietnam, we knew this was going on. The United States wasn't on the verge of collapse. How Russia can't sustain this, right? They cannot continue to let all these weapons go into Ukraine, embarrassing Putin, while at the same time, an economic WMD is now being unleashed on Russia. So he's going to have civil problems. These people are going to rise up. We're not going to see that probably because TikTok, all these Russian media outlets, Facebook, Twitter are now shut off in Russia, which is a tragedy, really. But we're not going to see how they're reacting, but they're not going to react well.
So Visa and MasterCard over the weekend said they're not going to process anything in Russia, which Russia immediately turned to China, and they said, fine, we'll use their Visa or MasterCard. But this is targeting the civilians, which we've never, ever done before. With sanctions. We always say we are targeting the regime, we're targeting the country, we don't target the individuals.
My understanding, too, is that the cards will work, Russian-issued visas will work inside of Russia. So they can still buy basic supplies with these cards. They just can't buy anything international.
So it's remarkable to me that nobody is noticing the number of companies that are involved in this. This has never been seen before. And everybody is saying this is great and screaming for, the oil to be shut off from Russia. But could I just point out, we don't have the oil. If we want it to shut off, we need to say, open up our own oil and gas resources. We can't afford to shut this off. Well, it's only 10%. Okay. You want another 10% on top? This is death for the United States. We are right now negotiating with Iran and Venezuela.
Amazing.
Why would we enrich those two countries? Look, I know the global warming bullcrap. I know all of these people are like, oh, well, the planet's going to die. Well, you know what? I know the radicals, the real radicals, believe that we should we need to shut down more than we did at COVID-19. That's death for millions of people all around the world. Literally, that will mean millions will die all around the world. We cannot shut down all of our fossil fuels at this point. Can't do it. I would understand if the president who disagrees with me came out and said, look, for the next 9 months or however long this thing drags on, we are going to open our pipelines. We are going to fund our, the Exxons of the world. We are going to start going back and taking the natural gas out and shipping it. We're doing it because we have to, or we'll kill the nation. Now I'm going back and I'm shutting it all off again in 9 months, whatever it is. People would understand that. Reasonable people. The only people that wouldn't understand it are the Marxists that want to destroy us anyway. It makes no sense. None. Why would we be enriching Venezuela and Iran instead of taking care of business ourselves? That should be the number one call. I want the oil to stop from Russia, but I want the oil to be replaced with American oil and gas, period.